Thank you all for joining me for another edition of One Night Stand. My name is Sean Ulmer. I'm Executive Director here at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, and I want to thank you for joining me this evening. This is a series of monthly programs where we look at a single work of art by a single artist for one night, and we kind of do a little bit of a deep dive. These are short programs, only about 20 minutes in length, with some time for Q&A at the end if you're interested. But I wanted to introduce to you a piece that is currently on view in an exhibition at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, get started here. There we go. Should see that full screen now. So tonight we're going to be looking at a work by Robyn Horn, Curving Stones #2 from 1999. This is the piece in question. It's a beautiful work of art in granadillo, wood, by Robyn Horn. And it was a gift to us in 2012 from David and Ruth Waterbury, part of a series of gifts they gave us over the years. We'll talk about that in just a moment. Here is a much better view of the piece itself, a really magnificent piece of wood. One of the interesting things to realize about this piece is that this is a single piece of wood that has been cut and carved to look as if it has been assembled. But it is not assembled. It is a single piece of wood cut in this manner by Robyn Horn to again kind of look like a series of pieces that have been screwed or bolted together, but in fact are not there. This is a single slice of wood that has then been later articulated. This piece of wood can be found in our current exhibition, Beyond the Object, Women Working in Abstraction. This is an exhibition we opened this past fall. If you were able to join us for a previous One Night Stand, our curator, Julia Jessen, looked at a wonderful profile piece from this exhibition. And I decided to stick with this exhibition and focus on this work by Robyn Horn. Here you see just sort of half of the exhibition. This is an installation view, and you can see the work in the display case here with other works from the exhibition around it, both on the walls and in the case itself. As I mentioned, this piece came to us by way of a gift from Dave and Ruth Waterbury of Minneapolis. They are wonderful collectors of wood and have been very generous in donating pieces from their collection, primarily to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, which is their hometown museum, but also to other museums, including the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. They have donated to us, I believe, 15 works of art. I have that here just a second, so I want to be misspeak. Yes, 15 works of art between the years of 2010 and 2016. Those are the years that they made the donations, but not the creation of the works of art. The works of art in question date back to 1983 and most recently a work that was created in 2005. Dave and Ruth are wonderful supporter of the arts, in particular the wood arts. Here, a view of the interior of their home. They've since moved from this place, but at the time you can see that they have a great enthusiasm for the collection of wood art and promoting the field of wood art and wood artists. Here, just kind of a wonderful sampling of their collection. Another view from a different vantage point that also shows sort of this love, this embrace of wood art and the promotion of it. As I said, they have given numerous pieces to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, as well as 15 works to us. And our thanks to Dave and Ruth Waterbury for collecting, promoting the field of wood art, but also for sharing their collection, their love of wood art with public institutions such as ours. Here is Robyn Horn, and I want to just by a brief way of introduction give you a tiny bit of biography about her. She was born in 1951 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, so not so a Midwesterner. Both her mother and her sister were painters, so it's not surprising that when she went to college, which was Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, that she received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. Following her graduation from college, she landed a job in the typesetting field in Little Rock, but then she became the chief photographer for the Arkansas Parks and Tourism Bureau. After trying her hand at stained glass, she found wood in the early 1980s. She was introduced to the lathe, which is a wood turning device, by her brother-in-law, who had recently returned from a lathe turning workshop at the famous CRMA School of Arts and Crafts. And with his tutoring, she began to turn vessels. It was 3 years later that the vessels gave way to sculptural forms. Here are a couple more views of Robyn Horn with some of her sculptural pieces. Throughout her career, Robyn Horn has been working in series. She loves exploring certain series. This is one of the earliest series that she developed shortly after learning how to turn wood on a lathe and creating vessel forms. She then took those vessel forms and made them into sculptural forms. Here, a pierced geode is the name of this piece. It's from her geode series, also known as the gemstone series, depending on who you ask. It is from the mid 1980s. It is a box elder burl, as well as pink ivory and ebony. It's a small tabletop piece. And this image is a courtesy of the artist. If you are interested in discovering much more about Robyn Horn, I do recommend her website, which is filled with wonderful images of some of the series, not all of the series, but some of the series that she has created throughout her career. This series lasts for a while, and she will come back and revisit series throughout her career as well. But this was primarily an 80s into early 90s series, and then the millstone series begins in the 90s, in the mid 90s. Here, a slipped millstone. That millstone is that kind of it's a large stone. Kind of a circular stone with the pierced center that's used to grind various materials in a mill. So you talk about a mill that's being driven by a stream, for example, that turns a stone, and these stones rub up against each other and grind the crops. Whether it could be corn, it could be wheat, it could be various crops down to make them more useful. It is a form that's been around for a long time. Here is Robyn Horn's interpretation of that form in wood, and she has articulated the surface. She's also cut it in a way that makes it look like it has slipped. And so hence the name slipped millstone. A sizable piece at 20 inches, but not nearly as big as she sometimes will work. Here from the Standing Stone series, Granadillo Standing Stone, from the late 90s, early 2000s, where she investigated this series of monolithic wood pieces, frequently pierced, as you see here. They really are kind of totems in a way, and a whole series of works she created out of that. But it is the Slipping Stone series that our piece comes from, and so I wanted to spend a little bit more time looking at other works from this same series to kind of provide a greater context for the piece that you can see on view currently at the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art. Here is Full Circle. Again, it's from the Slipping Stones series. It's from 2005, it's a little bit later than our piece, from a different material. And this is a piece that Dave and Ruth Waterbury owned and donated to the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And so this is one of the pieces that they got this piece and we got our piece. So you can see how they actually relate to each other. Like our piece, this is a single piece of wood that has been cut and articulated by Robyn Horn to look like multiple pieces of wood that have been bolted or nailed or screwed together. But it is not the case. This is a single piece of wood, a real kind of tour de force in exploring how to take a solid mass, such as a slice of wood, and articulate it in a way that makes it look like multiple pieces put together, but also creates a composition that's full of energy, full of motion, full of dynamism. And that's really what Robyn Horn is after. Really, this is a very, very animated piece, and in a way that no other artist has really been seeing the medium of wood. Here, a larger view of it. So you can kind of see it. It has the same sort of articulated surface that one finds on our piece. And this really is convincingly multiple pieces put together, but in fact, in reality, it is a single piece of wood that has been cut and carved to look like this. Also from the Slipping Stones series is this one called Really Leaning, and it really is leaning, again, like our piece, cut from a single piece of wood. Again, this looks like multiple pieces put together. You can see she's getting a little bit bigger here with a piece that's 50 inches high, and here in this case, I'm created out of redwood. And this is more recent. She does have other series that she's been working on subsequent to the Slipping Stone series, but like I said before, she does circle back and sometimes does new investigations of a sort of an ongoing series. Here, a detail of it. You can see the wood grain is consistent. It runs the full length of the piece because it is a one piece of wood. Perpetual Motion, again from the Slipping Stone series, much more recently from 2022. Good, pedestal, tabletop piece, good size piece, again created from a single piece of wood. And you have to work with the wood. The wood is a living medium. So you're working with this wood with all of its imperfections. You'll find holes, you'll find knots, you'll find all kinds of things that could ruin a piece, really, as you're sort of developing it and creating it. And she's been able to work, she understands wood that well, that she's able to still, create a piece like this out of a single piece of wood, and have it full of that energy and dynamism, and motion in this particular case, which is underscored by the title itself. And here a much closer view of it. It's really hard to believe that this is a single piece of wood. Flipping Out 3 from 2018. Again, another in this same series. Compromised Structure, also from the Slipping Stone series. You can see with one separate piece lying on the floor or on the surface. And here is another series. This is the Industrial series. And here you see that she's incorporating new materials. In addition to wood, she's also, in this case pine, she's incorporating steel. And she's piercing the wood in much the same way that she's piercing the wood in other series, But this has got a much more industrial feel to it, largely because of the inclusion of metal. And that's one of the characteristics of this particular series that she's really been doing in the teens and 20s now. And this is a typical example of that. Over the course of her 40 years, she has developed her own aesthetic, but she does acknowledge that she has had influences over the years. And one of those influences is the work by artist Barbara Hepworth. And here I show you just a single example of Barbara Hepworth's work. She works in stone primarily, although she did work in wood as well. And you can see here she takes a form not dissimilar in some ways to what Robyn Horn is doing. She takes a form and she pierces it. And she makes it, she kind of reveals sort of the innards in a way of this oval shape. And in the same way that Robyn Horn does in many of her pieces, you can see why an artist like Barbara Hepworth might be very appealing to Robyn Horn. David Nash is another artist whom Robyn Horn acknowledges. Here, a very recent work by David Nash, a figure not super huge, but just 21 inches high. But again, you can see it's all from a single piece of wood, and it's articulated in kind of the same way that Robyn Horn had been doing her work. This feels a little bit like the Standing Stone series that Robyn Horn was doing in the 90s. But different in many ways from that as well. It is kind of monolithic, but it also has this kind of stacking that is similar to other series that Robyn Horn has done. Isamu Noguchi is another artist that Robyn Horn acknowledges as an influence on her, or a kindred, at the very least, a kindred spirit. And so here I just show you a series of stone pieces by Noguchi from the Noguchi Museum in Queens. You can see, again, these forms are being pierced. They're being cut into. The surfaces are made very, very interesting by interventions on the part of the artist. This is very, very similar to the interests that Robyn Horn demonstrates in her piece. And Fletcher Benton here in steel and folded circle, double square quarter from 1978, reworked in 2008. A small tabletop piece, only 6 by 6 inches. But again, these forms with all these piercings, interesting intersections of different planes. Same kind of interest that one finds in the work of Robyn Horn. But it is Marcel Duchamp's new Descending a Staircase, to which Robyn Horn gives a great deal of credit for influencing her work. This from 1912, she said, "This is such a quote, such a magnificent piece of geometry, channeling, movement." Such a magnificent piece of geometry, channeling, movement. And that sort of in a nutshell is what you see in so much of Robyn Horn's work: geometry, channeling, movement. She sees Marcel Duchamp doing it so much earlier in painting that she is then taking and applying some of those same principles in her work with wood. She also said, muted colors he used were perfect to convey his message of transforming the figure into components and giving them motion. Transforming the figure into components, very similar to what she's doing with wood, and giving them motion, absolutely what she's doing with wood. So she really sees in Duchamp these sorts of elements that she's then translating into wood. And I wanted to show a detail of New Descending a Staircase and our piece. And you'll be seeing these wonderful curved, loosely geometric forms that are all sort of kind of intersecting, that show that motion, if you will, of that figure descending the staircase. And you can see how, in her own way, Robyn Horn has been picking up on that sense of intersection, that sense of movement and motion in a work such as the one that we have on view currently at the museum. And I wanted to also include this slide of Robyn Horn with some of the larger pieces. We've been looking at largely more domestically sized pieces, things that could be on a tabletop or might be 40, 50 inches, could stand on the floor, but she goes big. And you can see in work like this, exactly using her as scale, you see how she really does go very large. And I had to include this image of her cutting a very large piece of wood. You can see that she's creating this extraordinary slice. Now, what she does with this, I do not know, whether it's going to go into a very large piece or whether she's going to use this and then carve out all of the other piece, carve out the sculpture from this slice or not. But you can see that she's really very much working in this medium, full command of it, but understands what it does, understands what she can do with it. And she largely, by and large, does work by herself. She has collaborated a couple of times on a couple of pieces, but she is primarily working by herself. She does live still in Arkansas with her husband, who is in the typesetting industry, the typesetting industry, I think. But she is working here. Now, she and her husband do also collect, and they collect contemporary craft. And here a view of sort of the, if you will, the gallery wing of their home, where you can see some of the pieces. Robyn Horn, in addition to being a consummate wood artist, is also the founder and first president of the Collectors of Wood Art, which she founded in 1997, which was founded to develop and foster interest in wood art. She has amassed an impressive collection of wood art, of furniture, of metal, of glass, and of ceramics. And her collection itself has been the subject of an exhibition. And she, of course, her own work, separate from that, her own work has been widely collected and widely exhibited across the country. And she really is an amazing artist who, in her own lifetime, has been well recognized, has been the subject, as I said, of numerous exhibitions, has created this organization, Collectors of Wood Art, that has really fostered the growth of the wood art medium, and herself has collected a wonderful array of contemporary craft, all promoting the arts which she feels are vital to culture, vital to life, to be surrounded by the arts. I wanted to end with this photograph of her again in her studio, and a really, really wonderful quote. And I just feel like she really sums it up well. She said, "I am drawn to abstract geometric sculpture, the volume of it, the form, the textures, the negative spaces. I am obsessed with tension and movement, the gestural qualities of sculpture. I think in terms of wood and stone, of the things of which nature is made, of the ease with which nature develops into shapes and forms. created throughout centuries of accumulated time. I persist in seeing sculpture in a purely visceral way, line and mass, the interplay of angles and planes to create effects of light and shadow, with a strong emphasis on visual grace and a sense of structural strength and unity. And I couldn't say better, not if I tried. She really, really summarizes what it is that excites her about her medium, what it is that really interests her as she explores it, how it connects her in a very real and visceral way to nature. She surrounds herself. Her studio is in the middle of the woods. She's constantly surrounded by nature, and she's connected to it in her work, and she's exploring these other aspects that really, really have captivated her throughout her career. And that is the last slide that I have to share with you. Stop sharing. So I would be happy to take any questions that anyone might have. Like I said, she has a really, really robust website. If you want to see more images of her work, I encourage you to take a look there. She's really an amazing and accomplished artist who's done much for the field of wood art, but for the field of art and American art as a whole. Seeing her in the context of Beyond the Object, our current exhibition on women who are working in abstraction, puts her in a completely new environment, asking our visitors to consider her work, Robyn Horn's work, in sort of the trajectory of women who've been working in abstraction for many, many years, but have not necessarily received the attention that they deserve. And so we hope in some small way with this exhibition in Beyond the Object to shine the spotlight on these women who have often been working in the shadow of their male counterparts, but who have been really advancing our understanding of abstract art and the potential and the ability of abstract art to communicate with viewers. Robyn Horn is certainly chief among those artists who've been doing this for a very long time and who've been creating some really, really amazing work. So any questions that anyone might have? Well, seeing none, then I will thank you for joining me this evening and encourage you to join us next month for another edition of One Night Stand, where we will look at a different work by one artist for one night. Thank you for joining me this evening, and hope to see you soon.